everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kari, and today I have a super exciting video for you because I'm going to be reading my most anticipated release of 2023. And as you could tell by the thumbnail, it is Rouge by Mona Awad. First of all, before I say anything else, I just want to say a huge thank you to Simon Element and Marysue Rucci Books who sent me this ARC, this advanced reader copy. I'm so grateful that I was sent this early copy. So Rouge is actually just about to come out. It's going to come out on Tuesday, September 12th. So hopefully this vlog will help you decide if you want to pick it up or not. So the reason that I'm so excited to read Rouge is because one of Mona Awad's other books, Bunny, is one of my favorite books of all time. I love this book with my whole heart. I never shut up about it. If you've been on my channel before, you've heard me talk about it before, but this is why I'm so excited to read Rouge, because of how much I loved Bunny. I actually have no idea what this book is about. I haven't read the blurb or anything on Goodreads or anything at all, because I just want to be taken away in the world of Mona Awad like I was with Bunny. I just want to be surprised at every turn. But obviously once I get into this, I will tell you like what the main setup is. So if you're curious if Rouge is going to be for you, if you should pick it up, stick around. I'm going to give you little updates as I read this. And don't worry, there's not going to be any spoilers, so I'm not going to spoil anything for you, no worries. But yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. So I'm going to take you along with me for the next few days while I read this. I do have a few fun plans over the next few days that I'll take you along with me. And yeah, let's get started reading Rouge, my most anticipated read of 2023. Alright, so I've read like the first 50 or so pages of Rouge so far, and so I'm going to tell you what the setup is because like I said in the intro, I didn't know anything about what this book was about going into it, so let me tell you what this is even about. So this opens with a prologue of a little girl sitting with her mom, and the little girl is begging her mom to tell her a fairy tale. And the mom starts telling this little girl a fairy tale, and she starts to talk about this mirror that this girl in the fairy tale has, and she says that the mirror talks to her. And the little girl keeps asking her mom, okay, well, what did the mirror say to this girl in the fairy tale? And her mom's being really vague, saying that it has to do with envy and that the mirror said something terrible but true. And the little girl's trying to push her mom to get more and more information about this story. And then right at the end of the prologue, this image, like a figure, appears in the mirror, and then the prologue ends. So it's a really creepy introduction, very Mona Awad. But then we jump right into chapter 1, and it says that it's 2016. And this is where we learn about the main character, Mirabelle, and she goes by Mira sometimes and Belle sometimes, it depends who she's talking to. And we've learned that her mother has just died and that she's in town in California visiting from where she lives in Montreal, Canada. And we learned that Mirabelle and her mom Noelle kind of had some distance, and that Mirabelle doesn't feel like she knows her mom really that well. And there's also this big mystery about how Noelle even died, because where she lives in California is kind of on a cliffside, like she was out walking and she fell off one of the cliffs. And we learned that before Noelle, the mom, died, she worked in retail, and actually Mirabelle, the daughter, she works in retail too in Montreal. But something that is really present in this story already is that Mirabelle is obsessed with her skincare. Like she's binge watching these YouTube videos of this YouTuber talking about skincare, and you can just tell already that she has a really unhealthy relationship with how she looks and trying to make her skin look perfect. And it's clear that this has a really big part in her life. So like I said, there's this really big mystery about like how Noelle died on the cliffs. Like it just seems kind of strange. It seems like everybody's kind of questioning it but accepting it at the same time. And at the funeral, Mirabelle runs into this really weird lady who's wearing all red, and Mirabelle starts talking to her, and basically this lady was like, oh, your mom went the way of the roses. No idea what that means. Mirabelle doesn't understand it either, but obviously this is going to play some bigger role because it's some kind of mystery. And obviously there's a rose on the cover of this book, so something going the way of the roses is obviously going to play a big role in this book. Clearly this lady knows something that everybody else doesn't know. So that's kind of the setup so far for Rouge. I'm really enjoying it. It's very like gothic almost. Like it's not scary, but you can tell that there's something underneath happening, like the mystery of this lady knowing something about Noelle going the way of the roses, whatever that means. And the mystery from the prologue, like what the heck happened with the mirror with this mom and daughter, and was that Noelle and Mirabelle in the prologue? It all just feels very eerie, and I'm looking forward to keep reading. Alright guys, I'm back for a little update, and let me just tell you, I'm really enjoying this so far. The more and more that I read, it's getting more and more bizarre, and the more and more that I want to know what the heck is going on. Mona Awad can just tell a story like nobody else, because she really knows how to set like an ambiance and a vibe. A really big update that has happened since the last time I talked to you is that Mirabelle has been spending a lot of time at her mom's house, like dealing with her mom's affairs and everything. Like, what is she gonna do with the house? What is she gonna do with all the stuff at the house? So she's just been spending a lot of time there, and she was just out for a walk, walking along the cliffs and thinking like, oh my gosh, like, is this where my mom fell off the cliffs and died? And it's just really messing with her head. And you can tell that she's really going through something. She's really dealing with the grief of losing her mom, who she wasn't necessarily that close to, and dealing with the regret of that, and trying to figure out what is she gonna do with all of her mom's things. But through some bizarre circumstances, she basically ends up walking the cliffs one night and stumbling upon this other house not too far from her mom's house. And this is where things start to get really, really weird. Very Mona Awad. And I'm not going to give too much away about this because I feel like this is really going to be like the crux of the story, and I just want you to be surprised by it. But basically, Mirabelle stumbles upon this house and she goes inside, and there's all these beautiful people. And she learns that her mom was a regular visitor to this house. And she starts to get the vibe that this is basically like a spa. Because just like Mirabelle, Noelle, her mom, was really obsessed with skincare and looking as young as possible. And so Mirabelle is just thinking, oh, this must be the spa that my mom went to, because she's always had these lotions and creams in her bathroom that she's always really particular about using, and this must be where she gets those. So this like spa house place is what's really giving me Bunny vibes, because there's a lot of mysterious things happening. There's a lot of mysterious people there. They're talking to Mirabelle really mysteriously, and something's going on here. I do feel like this is a little bit slower than Bunny, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's important to point out that it's not as fast-paced as Bunny was. And also something that I really enjoyed about Bunny is that there were so many hilarious one-liners that I loved and just found so funny. And there's a lot less of that in this book, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it is more of a serious tone. And I think I would describe this book as kind of like a gothic literary horror, and I'm really enjoying it. There's actually a lot of French references in this, because obviously the title is Rouge, which is red in French, but also because Mirabelle's family is from Montreal. Like, her grandma still lives in Montreal, and sometimes we get flashbacks with Mirabelle with her mom Noelle, and Noelle speaks in French to Mirabelle. And it's just really fun for me because, if you don't know, I am American, but I live in Paris, France, so it's always really fun for me when there's some kind of French connection in a book. So I mentioned before that Mirabelle is really obsessed with watching like YouTube videos about skincare routines and different products to use to keep her face looking as young as possible. And sometimes Mona Awad gives really long lists of all these products that Mirabelle is using. Like, it'll be like a paragraph of Mirabelle listing all the products that she uses on her face in order of how she uses them, and they're like these like crazy names. And as far as I know, they're not like real products, so Mona Awad's just like inventing all these crazy ass products. And I'm really feeling like Mona Awad is critiquing the beauty industry and how the beauty industry makes us feel like we need to have all these different products to make us look as beautiful as possible. And if you miss one step, oh my god, like, be careful, you're gonna be ugly, and make sure you use all the latest and greatest products. And I also feel like it could be a critique of influencer culture, because obviously Mirabelle is watching these YouTube videos of this beauty YouTuber and showing us how obsessed Mirabelle is with watching this YouTuber, like fitting in watching her in every little nook and cranny of her day that she can. And so I feel like maybe Mona Awad is critiquing influencer culture like that. Anyway, I'm gonna keep reading. I'm really looking forward to seeing where this is all gonna go. I'm loving the atmosphere that's being created and all the gothic elements that are being included and the feeling of being unsure about what's happening. I love that. So I can't wait to see what direction this keeps going in. All right, I just finished Rouge and I just want to talk about it. So let's talk about it. Before I get into my final thoughts, I just want to talk about how I was feeling while I was finishing the book in the last quarter or so of the book. I did at one point feel like this could be a little bit shorter, that some things could be taken out and it wouldn't lose anything. I did still really enjoy it. I was just thinking, I hope that some people don't read this and think that some parts are too long and that they don't continue or something like that, because that would be really a shame, because it is a really good book, and I'll talk about my final thoughts in just a second. But I don't want people to like give up because they think that some parts are just too long. Something that I really enjoyed about the lead up into the end is all these little pieces coming together. Like Mona Awad's really good at leaving you little breadcrumbs and trying to figure out like how these little pieces connect to each other and how does everything fit together. And towards the end of the book, everything just kind of fell into place, and I really enjoyed how well that was done. It was just really fun to see how little things you've seen throughout the whole story, how they come together and what it all means. I do want to say that one of the best things about this book are the descriptions, because I could visualize in my head every single thing that Mona Awad was describing, even though some of the descriptions are describing things that are really out there and you have no reference for to imagine in your head. She describes it so well. I could picture everything, all the different locations that the story takes place in, all the different people, even the little nooks and crannies. Like there's a closet at one point. I mean, it's just a closet, right? But you can imagine every little thing that's in this closet and what happens in this closet, and every little room that is explored in this story. Like I don't want to go into too much detail, but every place that we were and every character that we met, I could visualize them perfectly because of how well they're described. And obviously that's a really important element when you're reading something that's kind of out there. I mentioned in my previous updates how this is really about beauty standards, like a critique of the beauty industry, and that theme just really intensified the further and further we got into the book. As I said in one of my earlier updates, Noelle is Mirabelle's mom and Noelle is white, but we learned very early on in the story that Mirabelle's dad, who Noelle is separated from, is of Egyptian descent. And throughout the book, through flashbacks with Noelle and Mirabelle, we learn that Noelle constantly tells Mirabelle how much she looks like her dad. And there's a lot of comments made on how Noelle feels about Mirabelle's beauty and also of Mirabelle's thoughts on Noelle's beauty. And as we get closer and closer to the end of this book, we see how Mirabelle is struggling with if she wants to reject her dad's heritage, which is also her heritage. So that theme developing really brought a new aspect to the beauty standard critique of this book, which I thought was really well done, really interesting. And after finishing this book, I was thinking, you know, I'm not really sure what Mona Awad's heritage is. And I looked it up, and sure enough, just like Mirabelle, Mona Awad's dad is of Egyptian descent as well. I always find that really interesting when authors put little pieces of their own life story into their books. Obviously, we can't say if Mona Awad is using her own feelings about her dad's heritage and therefore her heritage in this book or not, but I just think it's really interesting to have that connection to her own story. I did think when it got to these slower points that I was thinking, you know, my opinion of this book is really going to depend on the ending. I think, like, how is this all going to wrap up? And that's going to decide for me if I love this book or just really like it. And so I was really impatient to see how it was all going to wrap up. In the end, I love this book. I thought it was really well done. It kept me intrigued through the entire story. Even during the slower parts, I still wanted to keep going to find out what was going to happen next. How did everything connect to each other? I really like how it showed the different time periods of Mirabelle's life. Like it would go back in time to when she was a child and then come back to today. And I thought that was really well done. I love when books have multiple timelines, so I enjoyed that. I thought it was a really interesting study of societal beauty standards and also grief. As I said in my very first update, the prologue deals with the little girl asking her mom for a fairy tale, and I couldn't help that when I closed the last page of this book, I couldn't help but think about the story of Snow White. There's a very common theme between Snow White and this book, but it's not obvious. It's not in your face a Snow White story at all. Like really, like I could totally understand if that doesn't even come to mind for some people when they read this book, but the themes are very similar. I also really enjoyed that while I was reading this whole story, the story of Bunny was always in the back of my mind, and it constantly made me question what's happening here because of what happens in Bunny. If you've read Bunny, you know what I mean. It constantly made me question this book because of what happens in Bunny. So I don't want to spoil Bunny and I don't want to spoil this, but I just wanted to say that knowing what happens in Bunny made me constantly on my toes about what was going to happen in this book. If you know, you know, okay? I have to say that this cover took on new meaning the more and more I read, because at first glance, this is a rose, right? It looks kind of like it's smoking or something, or like evaporating, I don't know. The more I read this, I'm like, Kari? It's a jellyfish. It's a jellyfish. It's a red jellyfish. My mind was blown when I realized that, because seriously, I thought it was just a rose that looked like it was kind of like evaporating. Obviously, that's what you're supposed to think, right? It's not that obvious, or maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know. It's a rose, and if you turn it upside down, it's a red jellyfish. Okay, I just had to point that out because if you missed that like I did. Just to sum things up, I loved this book. It was really well done. I really enjoyed my time in it. Now, do I love it as much as I love Bunny? No, but that set a really high bar. I love Bunny so much. It's so freaking good. So this really could probably never live up to Bunny, but I loved this book. I gave it 5 stars. Very, very good. I would really recommend it. If you're on the fence about it, I would say give it a try. And if you've never read Bunny before and you're wondering if you should read Rouge or Bunny first, honestly, I think I would start with Rouge. And then if you enjoy it, go on to Bunny, because I think this is a good way to like dip your toe in with Mona Awad. So yeah, this was a really great reading project for me. I'm so grateful that Simon Element and Marysue Rucci Books sent me this early copy. Thank you so much again. I'm so thankful, and I would definitely recommend this to you all to pick up. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Rouge and coming along with me to Disneyland and into Paris and all that. I hope that you had a good time. If you did, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you back, and I'll talk to you again next time. Bye.